What does it truly mean to protect someone in baseball? Not with words. Not with a press conference. Not with a carefully worded statement released through a team spokesperson. But with action. With presence. With the kind of loyalty that shows itself in the most unexpected moments, in the middle of a game, under the brightest lights, when the entire world is watching. That is exactly what happened on a night that no one inside Dodger Stadium will forget anytime soon. Two former Angels teammates were ejected within minutes of each other. Their uniforms were confiscated. And Shohei Ohtani, the most celebrated player in baseball today, stood at the center of it all, wearing a tattered uniform, surrounded by every single Dodger who could reach him. The truth didn't come out immediately. It rarely does in moments like this. But when it finally emerged in the fifth inning, Dodgers manager Dave Roberts was furious. And once you understand what actually happened, you will be too. To understand the full weight of what unfolded that evening, you first need to understand the context surrounding it. Ohtani had been the target of attention, intense, sometimes uncomfortable attention, ever since he signed the most historic contract in the history of professional sports. A 10-year, $700 million deal with the Los Angeles Dodgers. The kind of number that doesn't just turn heads. It changes the entire atmosphere of a sport. With that kind of spotlight comes pressure. And with pressure comes everything else, jealousy, resentment, and sometimes, behavior that crosses a line that should never be crossed. The two former Angels teammates who took the field that night had history with Ohtani. They had shared a clubhouse with him. They had sat beside him during team meals. They had watched him, up close, become something none of them could fully comprehend. And somewhere between those shared memories and this current moment, something had shifted. What began as competitive intensity escalated quickly. Too quickly. And the umpires had no choice but to act. Within the same inning, both players were ejected. Their behavior was deemed dangerous, not just unsportsmanlike, not just aggressive, but genuinely dangerous toward Ohtani specifically. And in a move that underscored just how seriously the league took what had happened, their uniforms were confiscated on the spot. The stadium fell silent in a way that had nothing to do with the score. Here is where the story becomes something more than a disciplinary incident. When the dust settled and the situation became clear to everyone on the Dodgers bench, something remarkable happened. One by one, and then all at once, the Dodgers surrounded Ohtani. Not because a coach told them to. Not because it was the strategic thing to do. But because something instinctive took over, the kind of instinct that only develops inside a team that has genuinely bonded around something bigger than wins and losses. Ohtani stood there in a tattered uniform. The image was striking. Here was the most valuable player in the game today, a man whose face appears on billboards across Los Angeles, whose jersey sells out within hours of any new release, standing on a major league field with a uniform that told the story of what he had just been through. And his teammates didn't look away. They moved toward him. It is important to note that this kind of moment cannot be manufactured. You cannot script the way a group of professional athletes instinctively forms a circle around one of their own. That only happens when the culture inside a clubhouse is real. When the respect is genuine. When the commitment to each other goes beyond the field. The Dodgers, in that moment, showed the baseball world exactly who they are. The key here is not just the incident itself. It is what the incident reveals about the pressure that surrounds Ohtani every single day. Since joining the Dodgers, Ohtani has handled everything with a composure that most people find almost impossible to understand. Press conferences in 2 languages. The weight of an entire nation's expectations. The constant analysis of every at-bat, every pitch, every expression on his face. He carries all of it quietly, the way he has carried everything since he first stepped onto a professional field. But quietly does not mean easily. What many people on the outside fail to see is the environment Ohtani operates in. The scrutiny is not limited to performance statistics and highlight reels. It extends into his personal relationships, his business decisions, and now, apparently, into the way former colleagues choose to engage with him on a competitive field. The behavior displayed by the two former Angels players that night was, according to those close to the situation, not entirely surprising to people who had been paying attention. There had been tension building. There had been comments made in interviews, carefully worded, always deniable, but pointed in a direction that anyone familiar with the situation could understand. What happened on the field was simply the moment that tension became impossible to contain. And the league responded accordingly. Up until the fifth inning, the public narrative was incomplete. The ejections had been reported. The uniform confiscation had been noted. But the full picture, the reason behind the dangerous behavior, the specific nature of what had been directed at Ohtani, had not yet been made clear. Then, in the fifth inning, it was. Dave Roberts had been managing with the controlled focus that defines him as one of the most respected skippers in the game. But when the details emerged, when it became clear exactly what had been said, exactly what had been done, and exactly how deliberately it had been aimed at his player, Roberts was furious. That word is important. Furious. Not frustrated. Not concerned. Furious. Because Roberts understood something that the box score would never capture. What had happened to Ohtani that night was not simply a competitive flare-up between former teammates. It was something more deliberate. More calculated. And in Roberts's view, completely unacceptable. He made his feelings known. To the umpires. To the league representatives present. And in the way that truly powerful statements are made, through the clarity of his expression and the firmness of his words, to anyone watching who needed to understand that the Dodgers organization would not be standing quietly while one of their players was treated this way. The fifth inning became the turning point. Not just in the game, but in the story. Here is where you need to pay close attention. Because this is the part of the story that most people will overlook in favor of the drama surrounding the ejections and the furious manager. Ohtani's response to all of it. He didn't gesture toward the dugout. He didn't exchange words with the ejected players as they left the field. He didn't seek out a camera or a microphone. He adjusted his uniform, tattered as it was, took his position, and continued to play baseball. That single image, Ohtani in a damaged uniform, composed, focused, playing, communicates something that no press release ever could. It communicates that he has been here before. Not in this exact situation, perhaps, but in the broader experience of being asked to carry more than his share and doing so without complaint. Since his earliest days in professional baseball, Ohtani has existed in a space that no one else fully occupies. He is not simply a great player. He is a phenomenon. And phenomena attract everything: admiration, obsession, and occasionally, hostility. His response to hostility has always been the same. He plays. He prepares. He maintains his routine with a discipline that his closest observers describe as almost spiritual in its consistency. On this night, that was no different. And perhaps that, more than the ejections or the confiscated uniforms or the furious manager, is the most important thing to take away from what happened. The incident did not end when the final out was recorded. In many ways, it was only beginning. The league's decision to confiscate uniforms was significant. It signaled that what had occurred was being treated with the seriousness it deserved. But uniform confiscation is a procedural step. It is the beginning of accountability, not the end of it. What the league must now determine is the full scope of what took place. The specific nature of the dangerous behavior. Whether it was premeditated or reactive. And most importantly, what message the punishment ultimately sends to every player across the league about what is and is not acceptable when it comes to the treatment of fellow professionals. This matters beyond Ohtani specifically. Because the standard set in cases like this becomes the standard that governs everyone who comes after. If the response is insufficient, the message is clear, that even the most visible players in the sport can be targeted without serious consequence. If the response is proportional and firm, a different message is sent. One that protects not just Ohtani, but the integrity of the game itself. The league is aware of this. Roberts is aware of this. And the Dodgers, standing in a circle around their teammate in a tattered uniform, made sure that everyone watching was aware of it too. So what should we take from all of this? Not simply the drama of the ejections. Not simply the image of the confiscated uniforms or the fury of a respected manager in the fifth inning. Those are the surface elements of the story. They are real and they matter, but they are not the full story. The full story is about what happens when the most extraordinary player in the sport meets the most ordinary human emotions, resentment, jealousy, and the discomfort that some people feel when greatness reminds them of what they did not become. The full story is about a team that responded to that moment with unity, instinct, and genuine care for one of their own. And the full story is about a player who, in the middle of all of it, simply kept playing. In a tattered uniform. With the same composure he brings to every at-bat, every preparation session, every quiet meal where he is doing the work that no one sees but everyone eventually benefits from. Shohei Ohtani did not need to say a word that night. He never does. The Dodgers said it for him. And what they said, standing together on that field, was simple. We are here. We see you. And this will not stand. The question now is whether baseball, as an institution, is willing to say the same thing with equal conviction. That answer is still coming. But after what happened in the fifth inning, after Roberts's fury, after the confiscated uniforms, after the circle of teammates around a player in a tattered uniform, one thing is already certain. This night will not be forgotten. And it should not be.